One of the things I often hear when talking to new clients that come to me for help is this. Well, I don't know what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. All the relationships that I've encountered or dealt with in my life, they've always been unhealthy. I don't know what it is to have a successful relationship. My parents got divorced when I was young. My family members are all divorced or never got married because they don't trust the process of marriage. So I don't know what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. That's fear. And because you don't know what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like, your immediate thinking is, I'm going to mess this up. What I'm in right now, this is not going to work. Somehow is doomed for failure. With that attitude, it will fail. Uh, it's very simple. And I'm going to give you my opinion, because my opinion is the only opinion that I have to share with you. And this is a collection of talking to everyone else, right? Most of the people on here are my clients that come here to watch me, and those are the people that I cater to. And those of you who come here looking for some measure of information or a tidbit, I hope that I can add to what you're looking for. So in order to have what I believe is a healthy relationship, you need to have the 3 T's: trust, truth, transparency. Trust, truth, and transparency. Now, a lot of people would say, well, we have dealt with distrust in our relationship and we're fine. Of course you can be fine. That's what I do for a living. I try to help people realize that you can learn to retrust again if you have the elements of forgiveness and the element of commitment. You want to commit to this process of healing and regaining your partner's trust. I have videos on here about the whole aspect of learning to trust again. But trust is something that absolutely must be required in order for you to have a healthy relationship. Whether that trust has been broken, fractured, or needs repairing, it is an element that must be a staple in order to have a healthy relationship. Then truth. Truth it speaks for itself, you would think, right? What is truth? Well, let's examine this a little further. Most people, when you say the word truth, they're like, I'm truthful, I'm honest. If you keep on digging deep enough, they're not. They're not truthful with their wants, their desires, or understanding themselves or knowing who they are. And therefore they bring that to the table. And then there's a kerfuffle. Truth starts with the individual. It starts within you. And then that's what shows up in the relationship. If you're truthful with yourself, that's why I encourage people all the time to do the work individualistically and then bring it to the collective. If you're truthful with yourself, chances are you'll be truthful with the process, you'll be truthful with your partner, and you'll be truthful throughout the whole, learning each other. Because if you understand your truth, then you can probably help the other person to develop some notion of the truth or understand that truth is an element that is required to help you get to the next level. So we have trust and we have truth. And then the third T is transparency. A lot of people are like, what's transparency? I hear that a lot. People are like, well, you're not being transparent, or you know what, there's no transparency here. Sometimes people interchange transparency, the lack of transparency, with a lack of trust, but they're two different things. You may not trust the person to be transparent, or the person cannot be trusted to tell the truth, but they're not the same thing. Transparency means that nobody should have to guess what you're saying, or guess at what you're doing, or guess at anything. Everything you do should be above board, and the person doesn't have to read anything into anything, because your truth, your transparency are one and the same. They become the same thing in that moment, because you show up as your authentic self and you're telling them, you know what, I can be trusted. When I say something, I don't need to preface it with anything else. What I'm telling you is the truth. And if you tell the truth consistently, eventually that becomes a hallmark, and the person has a realistic expectation, and they know that you're not lying, and you're not making anything up, and you're not dodgy or or sketchy or anything. Transparency is your ability to show up in a relationship without any motive operandus, or I should say any motive that is not going to help the relationship to grow or to flourish. So truth, transparency, trust are all the 3 T's that are needed. But let's go back to transparency, because like I said, this is the one that keeps on surfacing. Why can't people be transparent, or why are people choosing not to be transparent would be a better question. I think the lack of transparency really has to do with the fact that the trust has been deteriorated, or it is deteriorating. So if your transparency in a relationship is not where it used to be, or is not where it should be, is because it was never there, or 2, it was there and then it started disintegrating, and over time you forgot to work on this element, or 1 or both people went their separate ways or are going their separate ways and decide, you know what, I don't have to, I'm not telling this person my true feelings. I'm not telling this person how, I'm not going to show up as my authentic self, because I'm withholding, because I don't feel it's a safe space. I don't feel it's a safe space for me. And that brings us to the whole element of judgment. How can you be transparent without judgment? How can you be transparent without encountering judgment? Because a lot of times in relationships where both of you are going different directions, it's because that person doesn't feel they can trust you to tell you their true feelings or their true emotions, and therefore they shut down or stonewall. And when they stonewall, then that whole element of distrust is just fostered, and it proliferates, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's like a cycle. It's a cycle of madness, where you cannot get off this loop of distrust, this loop of, the result of distrust is a lack of transparency. The transparency it just fosters the whole distrust. It's just a constant loop. So in order to stop the loop, you both have to determine to show up in the relationship and be transparent, or be willing to be transparent with each other. A lot of times one person will say, I need you to be transparent with me. And then when that other person is transparent or honest with their emotions, feelings, or thoughts or whatever, the other person immediately puts up, there's judgment. It's like, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. And you walk away and you're like, what in the God forsaken? And you go off. When you ask the person to bring transparency to the table, and then when they bring it, you reward them by being judgmental, or by shutting down, stonewalling, or holding it against them, holding the grudge. And holding the grudge is a big thing. I'll talk about that another time. But in order to have true transparency in the relationship, you have to limit the amount of judgment, or reserve the judgment. Is it possible to reserve judgment? You can judge in the moment, but you don't have to share that with your partner. You can take a step back and think about what's really happening here. Is the judgment bigger than the fact that your partner is sharing with you, or choosing to tell you something that they otherwise may not have, because they're trying to rebuild a trust? They're trying to build that friendship between you two. Is that friendship and that trust factor more important than your notion of being judgmental? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And if the answer is that all this stuff over here is more important than you judging your partner, or this judgment that's based on the past actions, then you need to stop, and you need to recollect yourself and say, you know what? I have to push past that judgment in order to see the real work that's being done here and the goal of the work. I hope that you understand the 3 T's: trust, truth, transparency. They're not easy, and they're not something that you just automatically fall into. These are things that are built, and they're built consistently over time, and it's a work in progress. And I want you to understand this, that trust is something that may be broken. It can be broken, is not foolproof or bulletproof. And therefore you have to set that precedent. You know me, prevention is better than cure. Understanding what you're dealing with, like my mother always used to say, if you know the devil, you can live with him. That's a whole nother story, but it's true. If you know what you're dealing with, then chances are you can choose to alter your behavior, alter your responses and your reactions to them. My name is Ingrid Felton. As always, thank you for visiting the YouTube channel. Thank you for subscribing to the videos. Thank you for liking the videos, for leaving your comments. And I want you to know I'm going to continue to show up, whether regardless of the comments, regardless of what's going on here, I'm going to show up because I think that as long as you're getting something, it is my duty to continue to give you something, whether it's a tidbit, whether it's a nugget, something. And we are going to grow together through this process. Remember the 3 T's: trust, truth, and transparency. Start practicing them in order to have a healthy relationship. And if you don't know what a healthy relationship is, if you come to the table with those 3 things, I guarantee you it can be healthy if you are consistent and persistent and committed. Bye.